הגיון ליבי לפניך, לפניך. אדוני צורי, צורי וגואלי, Adonai Tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, be acceptable to you. O God, my rock and my redeemer. God, my rock and my redeemer. Amen.
On behalf of the staff of Duke University Chapel and the Martin Luther King Celebration Committee, I welcome you to this commemorative service celebrating the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. In January 1956, during the Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. King received a threatening phone call late one night, and he talks about how he bowed his head at a kitchen table and he prayed to God. And he said that through this prayer, he received inner calm and recognized how God was able to give him interior resources to face the storms and problems of life. And if you've been breathing recently, you know we have lots of problems in the world. But King's prophetic work was rooted in the posture of prayer, revealing the interrelationship between action and contemplation. So today, in honor of Dr. King, we begin this service with prayer. Let us pray. God of our weary years, and God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far along the way to today, we come this afternoon like empty pitchers to a full fountain with no merits of our own. Open up a window of heaven as our rejoicing rises high as the listening skies, in gratitude for the words, life, and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As we gather to remember and to celebrate his dream, we recognize that many are living a nightmare because many still don't believe that we exist in an interconnected web of mutuality in which our destinies are tied together. We recognize that there are unfulfilled dreams and even shattered dreams because we have not seen the jangling discords of the nation transformed into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood and sisterhood. We recognize that some are living a nightmare as we have not yet seen all of God's children joining hands and singing, while we still see people being judged by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. We even confess that at times we have become silent about things that matter, and our silence is a betrayal. So we confess this truth, yet still cry out in hope, precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on, let me stand. I'm tired, I'm weak, I'm worn, because we still believe in your dream for the world embodied through Dr. King. Even while we lament, we hope, we dream. We dream the impossible dream in recognition that nothing is impossible with you, our Creator. We dream a world of peace, justice, love, and mercy, a world where these virtues would roll down like waters in ever-flowing streams. Give us the courage to hope and to hold fast to dreams. that where there is hatred, we would sow love, and where there is injury, we would sow pardon, and where there is doubt, faith, and where there is despair, hope, and where there is darkness, light, and where there is sadness, joy, that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, that we may not so much seek to be understood as to understand, that we may not so much seek to be loved as to love. For we know that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Only love can cast out the fear in our hearts. Let nothing separate us from your love, that we might be agents of love, so that there might be peace on earth beginning with us. Amid the nightmarish realities of our current day, may your dream come true, such that earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty, enabling us to face the rising sun of our new day begun, so that we might honestly, truthfully, and jubilantly sing the words of the spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Amen.
Good afternoon. I welcome you to the 2016 celebration of the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We typically have this celebration in Duke Chapel, such an important central part of our university, but due to the renovation, we're here in beautiful renovated Page Auditorium, and it is special being here. In November 13th, 1964, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stood here on this stage. And as you can see behind me, there's a photograph of Dr. King as he stood here and addressed students, faculty, and staff. As we looked around campus, we located a short while ago what we think might be the original lectern and microphone. So Dr. King's spirit is with us, and although the microphone isn't live, his spirit is on this stage and in this place. And so I welcome you to the 2016 celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. King. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Farhan Khan.
And I'm Roshni Prakash.
Reverend King was a prophetic witness who inspired people across many faith traditions. On behalf of religious life at Duke and Duke Voices for Interfaith Action, we light the candle as a reminder that God's light can shine through any darkness. And as we remember those who continue to struggle with oppression and injustice, we are reminded to continue to carry the light of peace, hope, and justice in the world. Thank you.
Lord, keep me day by day in way. I want to live. I want to live in a building not made by hands. Say, Lord, keep me day by day in a pure and perfect way. I want to live. I want to live, oh, in a building not made by hands. Oh, come on, choir, help me sing it. Me, Lord, keep me in a pure and perfect way. I want to live. Every day I want to live in a building, yeah, not made by hands. Can we sing it again? Say, Lord, Lord, keep me, Lord, keep, yeah. I need you, I need you, I need you to keep me in and perfect way. I want to live. I want to live. Oh, yeah. Say in a building. Not made, yeah, yeah, by hand. Oh, in a building. He said he was going to prepare a place for me. I can't wait to get there. Not made by hands. Oh, not made by hand. Yeah, I can't wait to get there in a building. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to get there. In a building not made by hands. By hands.
I'm Dick Broadhead. I'm the president of Duke, and it is my pleasure to welcome us all to this annual celebration of the birthday of Martin Luther King. Last Friday was his birthday. He would have even now only been 87 years old had he lived. I offer my thanks, first of all, to Cora Cole McFadden, the dynamic mayor pro tem of this dynamic city. Great to have you with us. My thanks to Shaun Harper, a wise, eloquent person who comes to us to be our speaker today from the University of Pennsylvania. My thanks to everybody who served on the organizing committee, and my thanks above all to the performers, dancers, and singers. If we only had you, this would still be a fantastic event. Those of you who've attended this in the past know what Ben said, which is that due to renovations, we are not in the chapel. Duke Chapel, this year and on this day, there's one fact about it that I think is the prominent one to call to mind, which is Duke Chapel, anyone who's ever been in it knows it is one of the most beautiful, one of the most splendid, one of the most awe-inspiring buildings in America. But not everyone knows that the architect of that splendid, awe-inspiring building was a black man, Julian Abel, chosen by Duke University in the deepest depths of segregation to design that building, though he was not free to appear on campus to preside over the building of it. That's 1934, and it reminds us of a crucial fact, which is on any day in the history of this country, on any day when there was any beautiful or important work to be done, there was a black man or woman who had the full ability to do that thing. But there have been points in our history, long, extensive points, when people were not always free to have the opportunity that their talent should have given them, and certainly were not free to have the recognition that their accomplishments should have brought them. Now let's come forward to 1964. I love the picture behind me, and I get a shiver looking at the idea of Martin Luther King speaking here. Durhamites know that when Martin Luther King spoke at Duke in November 1964, this was in fact the 5th time he had spoken in Durham. Maybe you know that Martin Luther King was supposed to be in Durham the day he instead went to Memphis, the day of his assassination. The first time he came to Durham, he spoke at White Rock Church, but he also spoke at Hillside High School. This was in 1956. He was then only 27 years old. He had already been recognized as an emerging leader. And when he was at Hillside, he said two sentences that are hard to forget. One, for democracy to live, segregation must die. And second, he said, looking into the eyes of the high school students of that time, doors will be open to you that have never been open in the past. Those doors didn't open in 1956. Some of them began to open in 1957 with the integration of public schools in Little Rock, but it was struggle and struggle and struggle for years that meant that by 1964, by the time King came to Duke, we were on the verge of the passing of the Civil Rights Acts and the Voting Rights Acts that made it illegal to discriminate on grounds of race in housing, in public accommodation, in education, and much else. And you know that when King came here, I'm just trying to draw the contrast between Julian Abel designing the chapel but not being able to appear in public on this university, and then the day when Martin Luther King could command such a stage here, such a short time after Duke itself had opened its doors to black students, to black faculty, and to all the important things that came since then. But as we all know, if Martin Luther King were to come back today, every year we have to remind ourselves of this painful point. If Martin Luther King were to come back today, you know that he would see things that would not only give him satisfaction, but would amaze him. The 8th year of a black president of the United States, I doubt that Martin Luther King ever seriously thought that would be possible in any lifetime of his. The fact that we now have the 2nd successive black attorney general, this one a woman born and educated in Durham, North Carolina, Loretta Lynch. Yeah, I think so. But we also know that if King came back, there would be much that would depress him, or I think the word, you know the word that King liked to use, was the word downhearted. Sometimes I feel downhearted. In the very account of that, the breakfast table after he'd received the threat to his children, he cites that line, sometimes I feel downhearted. Sandy Darity, a member of the faculty of Duke, is the person who keeps the so-called national scorecard of the wealth of communities of color, the thing that has documented most accurately the inequalities of wealth, the inequalities of income, and of amassed wealth by race in this country. We know that wealth correlates with education, and so we know that educational opportunities have been unequally realized in this country. We know that wealth and poverty correlate with health burden, and so we know that black communities and other communities of color have borne disproportionate shares of the burden of ill health. If you want to know more about that, you can read the book that came out last year by Damon Tweedy, Black Man in a White Coat, an incredible documentation day by day of his observing that in his work. And even as we come onto this campus, I'm talking about national things, but when we come onto this campus, we know there are things that would amaze and delight King if he came back now. A student body at Duke that had once been segregated, that now regularly produces students like Damon Tweedy, people who bring his heart and character to the work of medicine. I suppose it would be a pleasure for him to know that one of the two highest posts at this university, the Chancellor of the Health System, is now filled by Jean Washington, an extraordinarily distinguished African-American doctor and leader. We ran a search to find the best person we could find in the nation to lead Duke Health. We found the best person. The person was, nowadays, not surprisingly, an African-American leader. And on stage, and on stage with me, you know, there's so many things to like about Cora, but one thing is she doesn't miss the applause lines. And just one thing I would say, last year we had already appointed Gene Washington, but he hadn't shown up yet. But between then and now, little did I know that when we went out to hire a new dean of Trinity College of Arts and Sciences, responsible for 80% of undergraduate and graduate school education here, we would again look for the best, we would again secure in recruiting the best, and that would again be an African-American, Valerie Ashby, who I'm so happy to have with us today. So the progress goes on. At the same time, many people now in this room were with me in November in this room when we were reminded that other things are also true. If the successes are true, people stood here and informed us not everyone feels equally welcome at this university. Not everyone feels that they have the equal chance to realize the opportunities that led them here in the first place. And for me, this is just the closest up reminder of the general situation we now face. Progress we don't want to deny, progress we must continue to celebrate and accelerate, and challenges we must not forget. Martin Luther King Day is a powerful day because it's the day that reminds us that impossible things can be changed, and can be changed by means of human action, concerted human action in community to make a better place than the one that seems inevitable. That's the work that this nation is called to do in every one of its fields, and that's the work that this university is called to do. And I say to you, speaking both personally as the president and as the leader of Duke University, that Duke has my commitment and you have Duke's commitment that we will continue the work of trying to identify all the things that need to be changed to make every student feel as welcome here as any student, to make every student have the success here that any student can have. That'll be our work on campus and in the larger city of Durham. We'll be partners with everybody else in this town to try to make this the best place where every young child gets equal education at the beginning, equal health care till the day they die. These are important things for us to do. Martin Luther King was very fond of a phrase from Rabbi Tarfon. Perhaps you know it. You know that he was at a meeting of rabbis in the Catskills right before he actually went to Memphis when he was assassinated. The phrase is this: "It is not required that we complete the work, neither are we free to desist from it." We're not going to finish the work of making a perfect world, but at the same time, the very fact that we'll never finish it makes it all the more incumbent on us to look truth in the face, summon our strength, and go forward as we can. I ask for your help as we advance in these crucial missions. Thanks.
Dr. Broadhead, and the Duke family, Dr. Harper, other program participants, and all of my brothers and sisters assembled for this great celebration. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the greatest mayor on this entire earth, the Honorable Mayor William V. Bill Bell. You can give him a round of applause right now. And the Durham City Council and the residents of Durham as we commemorate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To Reverend Bruce Puckett and others hosting today's program, thank you for all of the positive contributions you continue to make to the city of Durham. As many of you may know, Congress passed the King Holiday and Service Act in 1994, designating the holiday as a national day of volunteer service. Instead of a day off from work or school, Americans of all backgrounds and ages were asked to celebrate Dr. King's legacy by turning community concerns into positive action. I want to take this moment now to share with you a specific way you can take positive action in the Durham community in 2016. Just 16 days ago, we welcomed a new year, and I pray that 2016 is a year that our community gets a hold of and dramatically reduces the number of lives lost to senseless violence. In so many ways, 2015 was a great year for the city of Durham. Durham continues to earn national rankings and accolades that show that the city is a leading place to live, work, and play in the United States. Our thriving downtown and great neighborhoods are continuing to make strides. While that's the case, we must acknowledge a factor that continues to plague the Bull City. As you've probably seen in the news, 2015 saw our community experience 42 homicides, the most homicides since 1993, and double the 22 homicides we experienced in 2014. The number of people shot in Durham has also more than doubled, from 95 in 2014 to 198 in 2015. Think about that for just a minute. Let those numbers sink in. Think about all those lives lost, all that potential wasted, all the broken hearts of the loved ones left behind. We as a community must come together to address this sad situation, and we must do it now for the sake of our children. While so many of our children are growing up and doing the right thing, there are some who are not, whose futures are dismal. It doesn't have to be that way. As you know, as you probably know, some of you do know, children and youth are my passion. Youth development and engagement from age 0 to 21 are critically important, not only to the youth, but to the entire community. That is why the City Council has made the development of a comprehensive youth strategy one of its top 5 work plan priorities for the year. And you can give us some. We must make it our top priority, indeed our goal, to create a bright and fulfilling future for our young people. I invite you as caring and engaged members of this community to get involved. Mentor a youth in 2016. I repeat, mentor a youth in 2016. Start your day of service tomorrow and make it your passion this year. Quite simply, we need your help. We need your heart. We need your service if we are going to make an impact on this devastating situation. It must be intolerable to all of us to let this violence continue. You may be sitting here today feeling that this situation is hopeless, that an individual can't make an impact, can't change or save a life. I believe we can do this here in Durham since we wrote the book on how to turn concerns into positive action. As Mayor Pro Tem, I personally witness how so many of our community members tirelessly work each day and every day to solve social problems and inequities. In Durham, it is often said that we have the heart, determination, and grit to tackle our problems head on, working side by side regardless of our race, gender, religion, or annual income. It's a part of our culture and our shared identity as Durhamites, and one that we are proud of. Durhamites truly embody, and incidentally, you live in Durham, you are a Durhamite. I just adopted you, all of you as Durhamites, truly embody Dr. King's vision through the people from all walks of life who call Durham home. The need in Durham remains great, but as an elected public official now for 15 years, as well as a lifelong resident, I feel privileged to witness the caliber of this community. I've seen what we can do when we put our minds and hearts together to find a positive solution. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I appreciate your continued support of your city and county governments as we work together to make our community a better place for everyone who lives, works, plays, worships, or visits here. As many of you know, I'm constantly saying that Durham is a city where great things happen. Now I challenge you to make 2016 the year where we leave no doubt that our reputation for having the grit to get it done is well-deserved indeed. May God continue to bless Durham and all who call this community home. Get involved. Do it now. We owe it to our children. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's always hard to follow Cora. I bring to you greetings on behalf of the faculty and staff that work across Duke University Health. As we join together today to honor Dr. King's legacy, I am both struck at how far we have come in fulfilling his dream, and yet, I think you would agree, how far we still have to go. I think you also would agree that as we witness the events in our country, our own community, and around the world, it makes for a heavy heart. When Dr. King spoke of the Promised Land, he was not speaking of the end to a journey. He was speaking of the responsibility of every single person in this country, our responsibility to ensure that we don't return to the depths that we have climbed out of. You see, progress is not promised. It is the result of conscious people making conscious choices and decisions to make the world better. Dr. King said, "You have a responsibility to seek to make your nation a better nation in which you live. You have a responsibility to seek to make life better for everybody." Personally, I want to see our great nation evolve to a point where we don't have to tell people that Black lives matter, because all lives matter. I want to see our nation evolve to a place beyond integration, a place where people can openly worship their religious beliefs without fear, a place where two moms and/or dads can raise their family without the fear of harassment or implications of losing their job. You can't make an impact in the world just because you're standing side by side if you're still not talking to and understanding one another. Dr. King himself said we must live together as brothers or perish together as fools. I think that says it all. We are responsible for the transformation of this great nation together. As I look across this room, there is a lot of power and promising potential. We have a responsibility to seek to make our nation a better nation in which to live. We have a responsibility to seek to make life better for everybody. Because even while standing in the center of the promised land, progress is not promised. We all have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mr. Sower stole my MLK quote, but I really am affirmed and esteemed by the repeated message of the progress that has taken place and still the responsibility that we have in the coming years to actualize this better America that we imagine. And so in the same vein, my name is Henry Washington, Jr., and I have the esteemed privilege of serving as this year's Black Student Alliance president. So on behalf of the student body, I am tasked with welcoming you to this celebration service in commemoration of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. In his commencement address to Oberlin College in 1965, entitled Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution, Dr. King stated, "We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools." So over the past weekend, I really have pondered a great deal over that quote and that address in consideration of Dr. King's legacy. Its message reminds me of the theme for today, Justice or Just Us, as both suggest the universal responsibility for justice and equality we have as members of this learning community that is Duke and of our larger national community. Dr. King's success as a movement leader in part came from his unparalleled ability to galvanize groups of people around issues that mattered to them, reminding them of the importance of their bodies as agents of change. It was about the work. It was about collective responsibility and self-accountability. So in this, our modern revolution for justice, in which perhaps the oppressors have changed and yet the oppression and the institutions responsible for perpetuating it largely remain the same, I think that this idea of universal responsibility is particularly poignant. We will not actualize a just reality without doing the work of being willing to name, challenge, and subvert anti-Black racism in our daily lives. It seems befitting, if not imperative then, that in keeping with the legacy of Dr. King and with the speakers who have come before me, I need welcome you by urging you to do what you can in the continuing fight for equality. What is it that you can do in 2016 to show that Black lives matter? Dr. King did the work, Mary Mitchell Harris, Jean Kendall, Wilhelmina Reuben Cook, Cassandra Smith Rush, and Nathaniel B. White all did the work. The students who took over the Allen Building, they did the work. Dr. Shaun Harper, our speaker today, is doing the work. Will you? So again, I say welcome. And as I often say, I implore each of you to ever honor the struggle of those Black men, women, and children who came before us and made this nation a better place for you and I to live. I desperately hope that in the coming months, you will choose to be a catalyst for change. Thank you.
It's an honor for me to be here today. I have two poems to share with you today in honor of every elder and who's poured into me, every organizer, activist I've stood beside and fought with and learned from, every artist that I've been inspired by, every student that's taken one of my classes, and everyone that I have watched do such great work. This is an honor of you. There's a joy that comes from seeing children playing in an open field, a twinge in your gut that comes from passing a sun-kissed testimony in tattered clothes holding court on a street corner, a smile that accompanies a phone call that says that hard work has allowed an example of Black excellence to be placed for the world to see. There's a head nod that affirms that in a room full of obstacles and expectation, we belong here. See, there's pride that beams at a child's recital, cheers that accompany athletic achievement, hugs that start a pistol, the next glorious gathering of friends, laughter that chronicles the best of times, tears that fall during the worst of times. These are all the moments that let us know that there is so much we're fighting for. See, I know a cadre of will that is talking about toppling institutions and dismantling systems of oppressions in the back room of a church, 2 prayers from a liquor house, down the street from a church named after an optimist, around the corner from a complex considered an eyesore with low property values that have birthed more blessings than bastards. These dedicated rebels are planning demonstrations, coordinating childcare, identifying roles and tasks. They are building capacity with passion unmatched, and their discussion is a joyful noise. These are the visionaries who know that there is so much we're fighting for. On a college campus, much like this one, there is promise wrestling with purpose in a classroom during the late hour. They have heard about the ancestors before. They are searching for victory after. They came to this meeting with questions they will leave with a focused strategy. This is what happens when developed minds gather to search for greater understanding. Past professors and syllabi together here. Careers and families are distant actualizations of a tuition-paid journey today. Today they are sharpening their skills at crafting a well-sculpted happy ending. Tomorrow they will march and demand, pushing administration to consider that dorm rooms are not margins and any blueprints for their future should have the etchings of their own hand. They are everything we're fighting for. There are neighborhoods to reclaim, lost lives to honor with resilience. There are names to say, legacies to build, ancestors to invoke. There are texts to review, positions to be held, stories to be told, lessons to be learned, insight to be passed, programs to be developed, work to be done. My God, don't you feel it? Can't you see it? There is truth, clotheslined along the horizon, hung by angels who want us to see what this world is meant to be. There, drying by the light of the sun, is woven inspiration, covered in the tears of those we lost before the battle is won. Right now, in your house, there is a mirror with an honest tongue and a glimmer in its eye, waiting to have a heart-to-heart conversation with you. It has a message to deliver in familiar clarity, a promise to give, a revelation to share, that if you are willing to look there, it will show you everything we're fighting for. Litany for Tomorrow in the voices of our children, inspired by Audre Lorde's Litany for Survival. There are those of us with kissed foreheads and our parents' hopes and our smile who may soon disappear. We are the children you call blessed, carrying wishes made with hands clasped and our heads lowered in prayer. We sit in classrooms combining daydreams with short attention spans and inspiration and seek a future too often we find snatched by blind justice, become martyrs instead of miracles. But this nightmare does not reflect the dreams that we hold. There are those of us who favor optimism over fear. We wish with enthusiasm and love like playtime will last forever. We do not want to see demons in mirrors or familiar hate in the midst of eyes. This is the product of well-placed headlines and prejudice. The foolish refuses to see the value in all of us, the brilliance, the fire, the innocence. But we were intended to survive. We are the doctors who may never find the cure, the lawyers who may never get to argue that statute. We are the chef who may never get rave reviews for the genius in the menu. We are the writer whose bestseller may be t-shirt with screen-printed memorial. We are the actors who may never get to see the standing ovation on opening night. The teacher who may never get to teach the next that they can be now. The mechanic, the store owner, the designer, all vanishing in the midst of gun smoke. Athletes are entertainers, politicians are revolutionaries, no games played. No songs heard, no speeches given. We are everything the future is supposed to be if they were not afraid of us getting there. We are the laughter God can't hold back that makes the leaves fall in autumn. We are the choir of caged birds covered in the ink of Auntie Maya's pen. We are the lighthouse eyes that guide you to work and back every day trying to make a better way. We are the hugs that feel like the wings of guardian angels. We are the kisses that turn into timely affirmation, well placed and well received. We are whatever the heavens destined us to be. We are the breakthrough waiting to happen, the testimony waiting to be told, the lost waiting to return, the wild and rambunctious waiting to be calmed. We are the star waiting to shine, the diamond in the rough waiting to be found. We are everything you know we are and none of what the media would make you believe, and that is why you should stand for us, fight for us, raise us, teach us, mentor us, love us, listen to us, because you know that we were meant to survive.
Good afternoon. My name is Rakita Sloan. I'm a graduate student. I bring to you greetings on behalf of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association, and it is my honor to introduce Dr. Shaun Harper, the keynote speaker. So when I was tasked with this honor, I began to think about quotes and things that Dr. King had said. So one thing that rings in my mind with everything that's going on is he said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And this quote, it should remind us not to sit on the sidelines of life and watch injustice, but to speak out and consciously push back against it. We're living in times where we're witnessing this right now with the uprise of protests, bringing light to unwarranted deaths of the likes of Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, and countless others. Even college campuses have seen an increase in student demands in support of racial justice in academic spaces, leading to the point this fall where campus protests were literally happening all over the nation in the media every day. These occurrences are what led the Duke MLK Commemoration Committee to the theme, Justice or Just Us, who is working to create a more perfect union. Given what's happening nationally around issues of race, it's only fitting that Dr. Shaun Harper, one of the leading scholars around race issues, urban issues, and critical issues of education, deliver this keynote address. Dr. Shaun Harper is faculty in the Graduate School of Education, Africana Studies, and Gender Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the founder and executive director of the Center for the Study of Race and Equity Education. His research examines race and gender in education and social contexts, equity trends and racial climates on college campuses, Black and Latino male student success in high school and higher education, and college student engagement. Dr. Harper has received over $11.4 million in grants to fund his research. He is the author of over 90 peer-reviewed journal articles and other academic publications, the author of 12 books. He is currently leading RISE for Boys and Men of Color, a 3-year interdisciplinary project that aims to advance research that will improve the lives, experiences, and outcomes of Asian Americans, Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Dr. Harper is an elected member of the American Educational Research Association Executive Council, being presented their 2010 Early Career and 2014 Relating Research to Practice Award. He formerly served on the Association for the Study of Higher Education Board of Directors, receiving their 2008 Early Career Award, and the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators Board of Directors, being honored with their 2012 Robert H. Schaefer Award for Faculty Excellence. He has also received the 2014 American College Personnel Association Contribution to Knowledge Award. In 2015, he was appointed to President Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper Advisory Council and recognized in Education Week as one of the 50 most influential professors in the field of education. With that, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Well, to echo Henry Washington, I would say that Dr. Shaun Harper's life is thriving well, and you're doing the work. And it's my pleasure to present to you all, on behalf of the MLK Commemoration Committee, Duke's 2016 Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration Ceremony keynote speaker, Dr. Shaun Harper.
I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote from his jail cell in April 1963. 53 years later, I am here in Durham because injustice is here. I am here because the enduring legacy and spirit of our nation's most beloved civil rights hero is here. I am here because you are here. Being here with you to celebrate Dr. King is a privilege I take most seriously. Speaking in the same auditorium in which he spoke 54 years ago, and just standing feet away from the microphone into which he spoke, is an experience I would treasure always. I appreciate those who deemed me deserving of the honor to follow Julian Bond, John Lewis, Merle Evers-Williams, Harry Belafonte, Marion Wright Edelman, and the 12 extraordinarily gifted others who have been afforded this special opportunity to deliver the Martin Luther King Jr. commemorative address at Duke University. I am humbled by your invitation and deeply grateful for this moment. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, Dr. King noted in that famous letter from Birmingham City Jail. Injustice in the tragic deaths of Sandra Bland in Waller County, Texas, Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ohio, Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida, and so many others in so many other places is most assuredly a threat to justice here in Durham. Injustice that occurs anywhere in North Carolina, is indeed a threat to justice all across our nation. I consider simply reading to you Dr. King's open letter from the Birmingham City Jail and highlighting its obvious implications and relevance to our current situation here in these United States. Then I thought seriously about using a handful of mind-blowing quotes from the genius that was Martin King to make sense of the resegregation of neighborhoods and schools in America, the devastating and disproportionate effects of poverty on African Americans, problems of racial profiling and police misconduct, and the continual and repeated breach of racial justice in our nation's government, courts, economy, workforce, and schools. But I find myself on the campus of one of the finest, most prestigious universities in the world. And higher education just so happens to be my primary field of study. Hence, I have chosen to frame this address around the roles colleges and universities play in sustaining threats to justice everywhere. Some of what I've chosen to share with you today comes from a chapter of my newest book, Race Matters in College, which Johns Hopkins University Press is publishing later this year. The third chapter in my book is titled The Miseducation of White America. I will spend most of my precious moments at this podium talking about that. But first, allow me to reflect on the recent wave of activism we have seen on college and university campuses across the country. A hunger strike at the University of Missouri seemingly set off a movement of nonviolent demonstrations elsewhere. Harvard, Princeton, Brown, Yale, Amherst, Ithaca, Emory, to name a few. On some campuses, students gathered in solidarity with their peers who were suffering elsewhere. We saw students at UNC Chapel Hill, for example, and demonstrators on other campuses carrying banners with the hashtag #IStandWithMizzou. These bright students understood that a threat to justice at a university located 923 miles from here was a threat to justice in this place. To be sure, many student activists and their supporters were not only standing with Mizzou, but were also protesting long-standing racial problems on their own campuses. A website, thedemands.org, lists 76 colleges and universities, including Duke and UNC, where students constructed and submitted to administrators demands last semester. List of demands, things they wanted to see change. Students kept the nation apprised of developments happening here at Duke using the Twitter hashtag #DoBetter. Thousands more at hundreds of other predominantly white universities across the country were using the hashtag #BlackOnCampus. Given my research on campus racial climates in higher education, several reporters sought me out last semester for analytic sense-making, expert opinion, and at times for decontextualized sound bites and misquotes on the activism we were seeing on dozens of campuses from coast to coast. They often asked me the same pair of questions. Why are black students so suddenly upset? And what do you think they want? I found the second question much easier to answer. They want justice. They want to enjoy the same academic and social experiences from which their white classmates benefit day after day. They want a curriculum that reflects their lives, histories, and cultural assets. They want classroom environments where they are not so routinely stereotyped, microaggressed, tokenized, disregarded, and disrespected. They not only want more professors of color, more professors who look like them, but they also want their white faculty members to be more culturally competent, more aware of their implicit biases, more committed to equally developing the full potential of all students. They want administrators to make good on the diversity promises espoused in mission statements, presidential speeches, in admissions recruitment materials, and elsewhere. That's what they want. They want institutional leaders, in fact, to be bold and courageous, to do something serious about the persistence and the pervasiveness of racism on their campuses. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want to be given the runaround any longer. They want Black lives to truly matter on predominantly white campuses. Wanting this and expecting this for so long explains why Black students are so suddenly upset. To nuance this, I turn back to Dr. King's famed letter from Birmingham City Jail. For those of you who have not read it, the document is an open letter to fellow clergy. 3 months prior, 8 prominent liberal Alabama religious leaders, all of whom were white men, published an open letter that essentially suggested that King's approach to integration, albeit nonviolent, incited civil disturbance and unrest in communities across the South. They wanted him to stop. They called on King to allow the matters of segregation to be settled in the courts. They urged him to be patient. They wanted him to wait. Let me share with you an excerpt from Dr. King's written response to his fellow clergymen. He said, and I quote, "We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I've never yet engaged in a direct action movement that was well-timed, according to the timetable of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never." And Dr. King goes on to say, and I quote, "We must come to see, with the distinguished jurist of yesterday, that justice, too long delayed, is justice denied." My sense is that students at Missouri, on campuses across North Carolina and elsewhere, were simply tired of waiting for racial justice. They were tired of having their humanity assaulted in just about every class they entered, tired of being so absent from the curriculum, tired of being denied access to predominantly white fraternity parties, tired of being denied membership in predominantly white sororities, tired of having nigger spray painted on their residence hall doors and nooses hung from trees on their campuses. My sense is they were tired of waiting for the institution to get serious about their everyday lived experiences as people of color on their campuses. They were tired of waiting for corrective actions to these and other racial problems. They had grown impatient with administrators who have made the same empty promises to generations of Black students. That is why they were so upset. That is why they're still upset. I know from the campus racial climate research that I've done on dozens of predominantly white campuses across the country that students' frustration and disappointment did not emerge all of a sudden. I have repeatedly explained to journalists over the past 2.5 months and others that issues students were protesting are intergenerational. They are long-standing. There has been long suffering to which students are reacting and responding. For more than a decade, I've recurrently heard Black students on just about every predominantly white campus in which I've done campus racial climate studies say they feel like guests in someone else's home. They have long found disgusting, as a matter of fact, the ever-apparent racial stratification of the workforce on their campuses. People of color who look like them, mostly in custodial, food service, groundskeeping, and secretarial roles. White people, overwhelmingly in positions of leadership and authority, deanships, tenured professorships, trusteeships, and cabinet positions. Students of color see this and are affected by it. Black male participants in my research have been telling me for the longest time that white faculty members presume all of them are athletes and therefore are not serious students, and that their peers assume they were admitted because of affirmative action, not because of academic talent. And that they are often asked where to buy weed because most black men are presumed to be either dealers of and/or users of drugs. Black women and Latinas often tell me that all eyes are on them when conversations about poverty arise in classroom conversations, because all of them are presumed to have come from ghettos and poor families. I cannot tell you how many times women of color have been outraged in our interviews with them about the ways in which institutional leaders so obviously and so skillfully pacify them by saying they're going to do something that they never really intend to do. By doing symbolic things like offering them a shoddy, severely understaffed Black Cultural Center, or launching a multi-million-dollar faculty diversity initiative for which there will ultimately be no accountability, only excuse-making. Again, my point here is that the issues Blacks and other students of color put on national display last semester through their activist efforts were in response to long-standing racial problems and durable systems of institutional disregard. These students and their supporters determined that justice, inclusion, respectability, and equal opportunity for success in college have been too long delayed and therefore denied. They, the oppressed, wanted more serious action. They wanted justice. I want to get back to the notion of threats to justice. Universities, particularly elite ones like yours and mine, are viewed as places of enlightenment. We are the preparers of the nation's leaders in most industries and social sectors. We equip students with critical thinking skills and other things they need to perform a variety of roles. In so doing, I argue in Race Matters in College that universities themselves pose a serious threat to justice. The U.S. Department of Education projects that our nation's colleges and universities will award approximately 1.9 million bachelor's degrees this year. Whites will earn the largest share of those degrees. They always have. Please allow me to tell you two quick stories about young white male collegians who I've encountered in my work over the years. We were on a campus doing a campus racial climate study in Texas. We always include in our work not only students of color, but also white students as we attempt to take the racial temperature of a campus. So at this particular place, we were in a focus group with white students, and there was this one white undergraduate man who was just so visibly frustrated. He was really mad. This student explained to us that he grew up on a ranch in West Texas, where he had no access to people of color. Everyone in his family, everyone in his community, everyone in every religious place he had worshiped, every school he had attended was white. His only exposure to people of color was on television. So he went on to explain that when he was doing his college search, that he had come across this really slick, really seductive admissions recruitment brochure that showcased all sorts of racial diversity. It included so much language about how students at this particular university are prepared for the global economy, and how it is a place where people learn from the differences that are brought from all 50 states and, dozens of countries. This was quite alluring to this young man. He said to me and to others on my research team, I didn't want to grow up to be a racist. I picked this particular place because it said in its materials that this is a place where people come and they interact meaningfully across difference. The frustration that I shared with you at the beginning of this story was because that was all rhetoric. There was no educational plan at his university to make good on those promises. This young man said to me, I really want to be in deep relationship with people of color, but I don't know how, and there's no one here to teach me. He was a junior. Now, growing up with no or perhaps very little meaningful engagement with people from one's own racial group, it's not an experience unique to this particular young man that I just told you about. Social scientists and education researchers have confirmed repeatedly now that K-12 schools in the U.S. are just about as racially segregated now as they were before the enactment of Brown v. Board of Education. It is plausible and quite likely, in fact, that many students come to Duke or to Penn, where I work, from context not too different from the one that I just described to you, this ranch from which this young man came in West Texas. The absence of an educational plan and strategy to make good on the diversity that we attract to universities like ours makes us complicit in the annual and in the cyclical reproduction of racist. In case you are not convinced, perhaps you might find some utility in this second story. A couple years ago, I was giving a talk at a small liberal arts college that is often thought to be one of the best in the country. My talk was about race, no surprise, and it was to an audience of undergraduate students. I would estimate that at least 90% or so of the audience was white undergraduates. So I gave my speech. At the end of it, we had a lovely Q&A. During the Q&A, one young man raised his hand, and he said, Professor Harper, I have a question. Could you tell me why colored people do this and why coloreds do that? And I'm just trying to, understand, why coloreds, so on and so forth, right? So in framing what eventually became an actually really good question, this guy used colored 3 times. So I'm a very loving professor, so I, sort of took a very loving posture, and before responding to his actual question, I said to him, you do realize that calling people of color colored is problematic, right? And he actually spoke back, and he said, no, I didn't know that. What's wrong with that? So I have this whole conversation happening in my head, dude, you've got to be kidding me. You can't be serious right now, right? But no one knew because I maintained my very loving educational posture, and I gave him and others in the audience sort of a quick sort of lesson about the historical baggage associated with the term colored. So when the speech and the whole event was over, several students came up to the podium to say very nice things, but also many of them, almost all of them, were absolutely just sort of mortified and embarrassed. They apologized to me repeatedly. They were like, we're so sorry that, this guy was so ignorant. And I said to them, no, it's all good, like no worries. Well, eventually the guy himself came up to the podium. His name is Chris. We're Facebook friends, and we've kept in touch. Chris said to me, Professor Harper, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. And I said to him, Chris, dude, I'm not easily offended. We're all good. And he just said, and went on to say and explain that much like the young man who grew up on the ranch in Texas, he was from a small town, and he had not had any interaction with people of color. He then went on to say to me that people in his family refer to my people as coloreds. So that's all he had ever heard. So we went on, just kept apologizing. I was like, dude, it's all right, so let me take control of the situation. I tried to put him at ease by asking him, sort of a handful of, small talk, sort of lighthearted questions. Like, oh, you mentioned you're from a small town. I'm from a small town. What small town are you from? Then I was like, what's your major? He told me his major. Then I said, Chris, what year are you here at the college? This was in March. Chris was graduating in May. He was literally about to go into the world thinking that it was entirely okay to call people of color colored. Imagine what else he didn't know about race, about language, about my people. Imagine what else his college failed to teach him and his peers about racial suffering, racial oppression, racial injustice, racial inequities. So I say to you what I said to Chris's peers, that it's not Chris's fault that he didn't know. It's the college's fault that Chris is a senior and he doesn't know. For hundreds of years, blacks were terrorized by slavery and Jim Crow. We continue to be terrorized by social policies that keep too many of us in poverty, by segregated schools that disadvantage our children, by the repeated miscarriage of justice in our courts. It just so happens that college-educated whites occupy positions of leadership and decision-making and authority in all fields and professions. They went to college. Every Supreme Court justice is a college graduate. Judges, teachers, and school principals are college graduates. Professors who oppress students of color in classrooms, and out-of-touch administrators who do too little to effectively address racism on their campuses all went to college. Most mayors, governors, state legislators, and people we elect to represent us in the United States Senate and in the House of Representatives are college educated. A great number of CEOs in the corporate sector are college graduates. Most of them are also white. Many of them are threats to justice. In several ways, their colleges and universities are to blame. You see, when we fail to teach about the realities of race and the ever-presence of racism in our country, or help white students understand the experiential realities of people of color, or teach all students how to narrow racial equity gaps in industries and professions they will enter after graduation, we underprepare them for citizenship and leadership in a racially diverse democracy. We set them up to fail the nation and its most vulnerable, persistently underserved populations. It has been and will continue to be the case for a really, really long time that whites will disproportionately occupy the most important and consequential professional roles in our society. They will continue to create and enact laws and policies that systematically oppress people of color. Sometimes they will do so unknowingly because we failed to raise their consciousness when they were students on our campuses and in our classrooms. We are partly responsible when unexamined implicit biases compel white executives to promote only white people to key roles in the company, or when the white teacher disproportionately refers black students to the principal's office and they are suspended for doing many of the same things as their white classmates, or when the Supreme Court ultimately determines that race really should not matter in admissions because students of color now have an equal shot at making it to elite universities like Duke and UNC. There will be no justice if students are allowed to matriculate through 4, 5, or sometimes 6 years of college without amassing a real understanding of America's historical record of racial terrorism. And learning how to dismantle our nation's current racist systems, policies, and practices. In this way, those of us who work at universities pose a serious threat to millions of Americans who will be impacted by the millions of students we annually miseducate about race in our classrooms. Those who think it is okay to call people colored. Those who believe that blacks actually want to attend terribly under-resourced schools and live in violent, economically depressed neighborhoods. Those who say stupid things like all Mexican immigrants are rapists and Muslims should be banned from the U.S. because so many of them are terrorists. Yet the person who said that last thing went to Penn. We taught those people. We took their money. We sent them into the world with college degrees in hand. What I'm really saying here is that if a North Carolina congressperson learned practically nothing about race and racism when she was a student at Duke, and she goes on to engage in racially destructive policymaking for the nation, then Duke is partly responsible for injustice in every place that is negatively affected by her actions. The great legendary Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was indeed a drum major for justice. Our nation needs more like him. We need some of them, lots of them, to be white. We need Duke, North Carolina Central, UNC, and NC State to better prepare them. We need many, many more of them to be critically conscious, well-prepared college graduates who understand that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you.
take a stand, not knowing I'd lose my best friends. But I'd rather live right than in hell lift up my eyes. All God's children just stand, oh, stand. Tell somebody, say you stand. Stand for holiness, yeah. Stand and be counted among them. Stand when friends are gone, when you're all alone, and believe we shall receive His own. Oh, I decided to take a stand, not knowing I'd lose some of my friends. But I'd rather live right than in hell lift up my eyes. All of God's children just stand, oh, tell somebody, say you stand. Stand for holiness, yeah. Stand and be counted. Stand when friends are gone, when you're all alone, and believe we shall receive His own. Oh, stand, yeah, for holiness, and be counted among them. Stand when friends are gone, when you're all alone, and believe we shall receive His own. Stand for holiness, yeah. Stand for righteousness, and be counted among them. Stand when friends are gone. Stand when you're all alone, and believe. Stand for holiness, stand for righteousness, and be counted. Stand when friends are gone. Stand when you're all alone. Stand for holiness, stand for righteousness, and be counted among them that shall reign with me. You just stand, stand, and believe, and believe we shall receive His own. You just stand when you're all alone. Just stand, even when friends are gone. Stand for holiness, stand for righteousness, stand for justice. You just stand, yeah. You just stand, yeah. Just stand. You just stand.
And now, after our rendition of Stand by John Peakey, I'd like to invite you all to stand and join us in the congregational hymn of We Shall Overcome. we shall all be free.
We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Whoa, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall all be free someday.
We shall live in peace.
We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Whoa, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall live in peace someday,
And the Lord will see us through.
the Lord will see us through. The Lord will see us through. The Lord will see us through someday. Oh, deep in my heart,
Yeah.
I do believe the Lord will see us through someday.
So what? You just decided to extend the verse and
Which part?
Henry Salter.
You didn't know we were practicing.